life. And finally, announced the well-spoken news presenter, police are still investigating the recent spate of jewel thefts in London. Jewellers affected by the robberies have offered a reward of £1,000 to anyone who can provide information concerning those responsible. Members of the public must contact New Scotland Yard direct. And that brings this edition of the 7 o'clock news to an end. This is the BBC. The time is now 5 minutes past 7. Good evening. Beth placed a small board of bite-sized chunks of cheddar and Cheshire cheese on the coffee table as the dramatic theme tune to Paul Temple began. She sat on the sofa, where James, after pinching a portion of cheddar, joined her. "Did you hear that?" he said. "They've posted a reward for information on the robberies. £1,000. Beth mouthed a silent phew, then shot him a questioning look. "Don't worry, my dear. I'm not extending my sleuthing skills beyond the boundaries of Cavendish." "I should hope not," replied Beth, snuggling up to him. "The only mystery I want solved is the one I'm about to listen to." James settled back, speculating all the same that it would be exciting to be involved in a jewel heist mystery. Chapter 2. The following morning, James strode into the newsagent's, secured the local paper under his arm, and ordered 2 sherbet fountains. The owner of the shop, Mrs. Withers, pulled a face that would curdle milk. She let out an impatient, "Pah! Sherbet fountains," she mumbled. "Set your teeth on edge. No good for your gums. Full of sugar. Can't bear them. You can't beat an Everton mint. That's more like it." She turned away and yelled at her feet, "Stop that, Winnie!" James peered over the counter to see Winston, the British bulldog, tugging at a box of unopened chocolate. He had always felt that it was true what was said about dogs taking after their owners. This was no exception. Both were hard-faced and ready for battle, whether it was over a major issue or one's taste in sweets. He had never warmed to the buxom Mrs. Withers with her dyed jet-black hair, and as far as he could tell, the feeling was mutual. Her fearsome reputation for being difficult and scathing was well known in the village. She had spent most of her career in a communications role with the Women's Royal Naval Service and, during the war, had plotted battle progress in an operations room in the naval town of Portsmouth. James wondered if that was where she'd become so bossy. After the hostilities, she had taken over the sweet shop, which surprised everyone. He thought she'd be better off staying in the services, where she could order people around to her heart's content. She certainly wasn't suited to serving customers. His own twins, Oliver and Harry, had hated coming in as youngsters because of her narrow-eyed examination. In those days, the children had nicknamed her Withers the Witch. It appeared that this current generation had also adopted the term. Only the other day he had heard the name used by local schoolchildren. Sherbet fountains were, as far as he was concerned, the sweet to have as a child. An explosion of delight surrounding a stick of licorice. He forced out a chuckle to break the ice as she placed 2 of the said fountains in a paper bag. "They're not for me, actually," James added, feeling that he had to explain himself. "They're for Mark and Luke, the Reverend's boys. Just seen 'em outside and can't go out there empty-handed." James hastily handed Mrs. Withers the correct money and made a quick exit, but not without the mumbled words, "Spoilt brats," reaching his ears as the door closed behind him. Goodness, that woman is not cut out for such a shop, he thought. She'd be better behind the scenes, taking note of the stock and completing the accounts. He called across to Anne Merriweather, the Reverend's wife, who was sitting on one of the wooden seats placed around the village green. Luke and Mark were playing tag with Tommy and Susan Hawkins, whose father, Charlie, ran the Cavendish Library. They raced and dodged one another as if their lives depended on it. James sat down next to her and handed over the sweets with the excuse that the boys probably deserved a treat.